So we're going to talk about the Civil War. This is our next unit, and we're going to focus in this video on the two sides. The vocabulary words include border states, rebel, and Yankee. So as we've talked about a little bit in class, hopefully, by February 1861, 7 states had left the Union and formed the Confederate States of America, CSA. The Confederates then began bombing Fort Sumter. They needed weapons, ammunition, and Fort Sumter, which was located in the South, was an excellent place to find that. President Lincoln immediately issued a call to troops to save the Union, and Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas all joined the Confederacy. At the time, they decided that the Confederate capital would be Richmond, Virginia, only 100 miles away from Washington, D.C. So 4 states, however, did decide to remain in the Union. These states all had slavery: Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. Now, they were divided on whether to support the Union or to join the Confederacy. They were known as border states. Losing any one of these border states, vocab term, definition means states that allowed slavery but remained in the Union, would damage the North. All of these states would. They had strategic locations. First was Missouri. Missouri allowed for control of part of the Mississippi River. Kentucky allowed control over the Ohio River. Are you catching where most of these are very important, why they're important? Delaware, not close to a river, but it would be located close to Philadelphia, our original beginning point of the United States. And Maryland was very close to Richmond, and it also held the North's capital. Washington, D.C., remember, is in the border state of Maryland. Now, Maryland's role in this became very clear. In April 1861, a mob of Southern sympathizers attacked Northern troops, cut the telegraph lines, and basically isolated the capital city from the rest of the North. Now, Northern troops would arrive, but the nation's capital had suffered some very anxious days, and so we knew, President Lincoln knew, that he had to be very, very careful. He had to be very cautious to avoid upsetting those people in the border states. For instance, if he came out and announced that he wanted to end slavery, those border states would quickly fall to the side of the South. He can't do that. However, he did act boldly in some other aspects. For instance, he suspended the constitutional right to freedom of speech. He suspended the constitutional right to freedom of assembly and freedom of the press. He managed to use his power to arrest people who were actively supporting the secession. He supported a rebellion against the pro-Confederate government in Missouri. All of this managed to work. None of the border states turned. Their citizens, directly impacted by these decisions and these suspension of rights, left and joined Southern armies, but Lincoln did not lose the states and their governments as a whole. Now, most white Southerners supported secession, but there were Union supporters, especially in eastern Tennessee and western Virginia. And in 1861, 48 Virginia counties organized themselves and seceded from a state that had seceded from the Union and joined the United States in 1863. That is the state of West Virginia. Now, before we go much farther, we need to do a little bit more comparison of the North and the South. First of all, we got to look at the presidents. Jefferson Davis, he was a president for the Confederate States of America, and Abraham Lincoln. Now, the North had several strengths. So this first section is going to be strengths. Larger population, more industry, more resources, better banking, more ships, most of the Navy remained loyal, and a larger and more efficient railway network. Another great strength would be Abraham Lincoln. He was extremely dedicated to keeping the United States together, very intelligent. He had a lot of skill and humanity. He did not want to punish the South. That will come up later. Now, weaknesses would be we have to take over and hold the South. Public opinion was very divided in the North. Not everybody supported the war, mostly because not everybody was against slavery. We have to remember it's a very racist time in the United States, so not everybody wanted blacks to be free. Now, the goals of the North were simply to bring Southern states back into the Union. Ending slavery is not the major goal, but we're going to see that changes at some point. Now, strategy-wise, we need to prevent the Southerners from getting supplies, so to speak, starve them out. We need to gain control of the Mississippi River, which would help to cut those supply lines, as well as splitting the Confederacy in half. And then we have to take over the capital city of Richmond. Very difficult strategy. Now let's look at the South. Strengths: strong support by the white population. Slaves, not so much. Fighting on a home turf. We know that this is usually a benefit. The military leadership was superior, and that's mostly connected to being a strong tradition of military training and service. Most rich white kids in the South attended West Point at some point in their life. They were expected to go to military training. They were wealthier. They could afford that. So we will see that play out throughout the Civil War, this benefit that the South gets to having their boys with some sort of training. Jefferson Davis himself went to West Point, so again, a huge benefit. Now, there were numerous weaknesses. Smaller overall population because they're not counting blacks in this population. Few factories, little food production when compared to the North, less railroad tracks and fewer trains. And the South was very strong in states' rights. And some states refused to give the Confederacy any power. Remember, if we go back to the Articles of Confederation, a confederacy is a league of friendship. So they're not going to give the federal government too much power. Now, the South's aim was basically to gain recognition and preserve their traditional way of life. It was very simple. Strategy to do that would be a defensive plan. Defend their homeland, hope that the North would get tired of fighting, expect Britain and France to get involved, and they would, however, change their mind at one point, and they would take an offensive strategy, moving armies north to threaten Washington and other northern cities. That became a strategy later on. In the next section, we're going to talk about people and who were the soldiers.